All right, everybody. Good evening and welcome to our October chat session. Tonight, Tom and I will be discussing electronic navigation. Welcome all the new names tonight. So, Tom, what are we going to talk about tonight? This is your baby, so let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah, well, navigation is my baby. And this is titled Electronic Navigation Basics, but I started jotting down a list of all the different assets that are available to navigators, in terms of reference books and online stuff and so forth. And I was amazed at the length of this list after I jotted it down. So there's a lot of items that I'm not sure that a lot of sailors are aware of. So I'm going to put up a list on screen and tick through those very quickly. And then when we get to the question and answer portion of this, then we can go back and talk about details on some of that. Okay, but I want to give you an overall perspective of what I'm thinking and use in terms of navigation, both electronic and supporting information. So electronic navigation basics. As I say, I put together this list and then I started thinking about, wow, what a lengthy list this is. So I've broken it down into a couple of groupings. One is pre-planning your cruise. You're going to go on a cruise for one day or a week or whatever, and you have to plan your route. So I want to go through some of the assets that we use in order to do that. First off is the deck logbook itself, where we jot down our planning notes so that during the cruise I can go back and find the information that I need at each leg of the cruise. We have the old PDF paper charts, which are not updated anymore by NOAA, but they're still valuable, and we still use them as a collateral reference, okay? We have to understand the limitations that it doesn't include updated information in a lot of cases. Then we have a NOAA ENC database, which is displayed on screen on the internet as an interactive marine chart, which you can go to an object on that screen and click it and get a lot of layers of underlying information. But basically, this is the master database that NOAA has for electronic navigation chart data, okay? Then there's the NOAA NCC, which is the custom chart tool that NOAA has online, where you as the navigator, the mariner, want to create a new PDF chart. Since the old PDF charts, as we say, are out of date, you can go into that tool and you can basically go through a procedure where you can choose the size and the detail level of that NCC chart, and you can create a PDF chart and have it printed in a commercial printing place like Staples, and anywhere from 8.5 by 11 on up to 42 by 60 in full living color, okay? Then there's the U.S. Coast Guard Light List, which is a book publication published annually online, which you can download a PDF, but that changes at the beginning of the year, and then it's not republished during the year. However, there's then a weekly online, which shows the updated version of the important information in that book. Then there's the annual hard copy that you can purchase from Amazon and others. And temporary changes are not shown either here or in the NCC or in the ENC. What is shown in these documents is basically the design configuration. And by design configuration, what I mean is the configuration of the waterway and the navigational aids that are on that. But if something changes in that navigational aid, like the light doesn't work anymore, that change is not going to show in these documents. What's only going to show is what's supposed to be operational. Then there's the NOAA Coast Pilot, which is basically the NOAA cruising guide for different areas. And you can purchase that again, hard copy online. Then the temporary changes, I mentioned that the previous documents I talked about did not reflect temporary changes, but then the NOAA and the Coast Guard have methods of getting those temporary changes even down to the most recent hour. So this will include changes that might occur to the navigational aids themselves, the buoys and the beacon, restrictions that might be imposed, channel changes, depths, and so forth, dredges operating in the area you're going to be sailing, and that can change from day to day, obstructions like a ship sinks or a bridge falls down, events like a couple of years ago, I was going down Chesapeake Bay and I got the notice to mariners and it said there's a swim event that's going across the Chesapeake Bay at the Annapolis Bay Bridge, and they actually closed the channel. Well, who in the world would expect that? Rocket launches, military operations. Another time I was going into Little Creek near Norfolk, and I ended up being in the middle of a naval landing on the beachhead there where they were practicing these landings, and these high-speed hovercrafts were passing me on both sides. The Coast Guard notices show the temporary changes in these documents, LNN, which is a local notice to mariners, the BNM, broadcast notice to mariners, MSIB, which is the Marine Safety Information Bulletins, VHF radio, and you can get subscription by email on these items. There's also an RSS feed. Then the Coast Guard MSI application available online. This is a terrific new item that the Coast Guard put up earlier this year. So it's still fairly new, even in my experience using it. But basically, this shows the design configuration plus the temporary changes. It shows discrepancies, like a buoy light is extinguished, discrepancy corrections when they occur. It's updated actually a few times each hour. So this is very recent information. The Coast Guard notices, as discussed above, and various other items that are in here. But basically, this gives you a whole menu list, this MSI app, a whole menu list of different groupings of information that are available, and presto, there it is. Then there is the multifunction plotter that we have on our boats, some in the cockpit, some down below where they should be. So those are some of the assets. You've already done your pre-planning now, and you're going to go on the cruise, and you have to track your route progress. So first off, of course, are the on-deck observations and your lookout. Then the multifunction plotter, which includes GPS waypoints, course lines, boat position, times, distance, speed, AIS. And the AIS brings you these three different items. First off is the other vessel course, speed, and closest point of approach. Then there are AIS navigational aids, physical, virtual, and synthetic. Physical is where they actually put an electronic device on the buoy. Virtual is where they transmit a AIS signal to tell you where this buoy should be, but it may not be there. And thirdly, a synthetic where there's no buoy or no intended buoy, and they just create an AIS like there's a problem and they want to call attention to a particular spot. They can just transmit an AIS, a synthetic AIS, to that location. Then thirdly, AIS MOB device, which a crew member can be wearing, and if they go in the water, MOB, their device will transmit an AIS signal back to your boat, your screen. Then there's radar, collision avoidance, used for that, for storm tracking, for raycons that are on nav aids. And a raycon is a radar transponder beacon, which when your radar hits that beacon, it transmits a coded signal back to your radar screen to confirm that that buoy that you see on your screen is the one, in fact, specific to this raycon. Paper charts that you're using underway, planned route, courses, and so forth, channels, depths. Deck logbook, planning notes, courses, waypoints, distances, nav aids, cautions and restrictions, Coast Guard notices, MSI. All this information you have recorded in your logbook ahead of time, and you have it readily available with both the charts and your notes in your deck logbook. And then we have chart plotters. There's a couple of different types shown here. One is OpenCPN, and that's what you would search for. You can download the free program on Windows, Mac, and others, but not iPad. It directly uses the free NOAA ENC chart data. It uses various other electronic charts as you may wish to acquire. And in here, you can use it as a navigation tool, plotting routes, setting waypoints, and so forth, and also seeing your boat location. Then Coastal Explorer is similar, except this is a purchase program for about $400 for 3 computers available on these devices. Mac, if you have a Windows app on your Mac, and it directly uses the free ENC charts in that case. Then as an example of a multifunction plotter, the Garmin multifunction, you need to purchase the Garmin proprietary charts at a significant cost. And when you purchase those charts, if that chart you purchased was updated 2 weeks ago, well, it's 2 weeks out of date. My heartburn with purchasing expensive online charts for Garmin or any other multifunction plotter is that they're not currently up to date at any time, even if you just downloaded the update for them. AI says that the NOAA ENC charts can be used after conversion to a GPX file. Navionics is really a Garmin subsidiary used on mobile devices. And in there, again, you're using proprietary charts. It's updatable, but again, updates are suspect in terms of how updated they are. Other multifunction devices by various other manufacturers are similar. To the best of my knowledge, I have not been able to find a multifunction plotter that will natively use the NOAA ENC free charts. Then there's weather forecasting, and these are all the classic things, but these are just things we have to think about, including SiriusXM and your own on-deck observations and your radar observations of storm tracks and so forth. So I know I went through that very, very quickly. I'll be happy to discuss details of these if you have questions, but basically I wanted to give you an overall perspective of the items that are available to navigators.
Well, while you're in there for just a little bit, Tom, we do have a couple of questions.
Yeah, here we go.
The first one was, are we going to provide links to these sites?
I can provide this list that I just showed by email to everyone, so you'll at least have the list. And as far as links to the site, no, I'm not going to do that work. I'm going to make you do that work, the user. You should learn how to do it rather than me holding your hand and dragging you through it. So we're all these days very, very versatile in terms of using the internet and searching things out. So search it out. If you have a problem, let me know. Then I can answer your question.
Well, there you go. Somebody said, where did you say was the best source of the temporary changes? Was it the general U.S. Coast Guard site, or was there a specific site?
Good question. There are actually 2 ways to address that. One is what I'm going to call the old-fashioned or the older method, where we actually go online and we download the light list or the weekly light list. We download the notices to mariners. You subscribe to, by the way, to the notices to mariners, the BNMs, the broadcast notice to mariners, and so forth. So basically, you can collect all these different pieces that I showed in the list and go through and manually on screen on your computer look at these items and put together, your picture of things. The second method, and this is the most recent, and that is using the Coast Guard USCG MSI. If you go online and Google USCG MSI, you'll come up with the MSI app. And that is a beautiful app which will look up all this information for you very, very easily. I'm showing you both because you don't always have good internet connection when you're sailing.
Yeah.
So
somebody asked if that MSI app can be installed on a phone. Is that something that could be put onto a mobile device, or is it something that you have to have on a computer?
If you can go online with your mobile device, then you are able to download it
So
in
it's
that.
not a separate application. It's simply an application within their website.
Well, as I say, if you Google on USCG MSI, it'll bring you right to a link where you can see that.
Mhm. Yeah, I believe that's on the NavSend site. So we have a question. Why use, and I'm going to, somebody responded to this, and I'm going to go ahead and read the response at the same time and let you comment on it. Why use NOAA ENC at all when only using NOAA NCC has all the newest updates? And somebody responded, if you don't want to build a custom chart for your own particular area, but just want the available NOAA ENC chart, even if it's not the most up-to-date, meaning that would be why you'd use ENC, but then they responded, but I do like the NCC charts a lot. And I think that's a valid comment, that if you just want the ENC charts, you can get those. And if you had an application like Coastal Explorer or OpenCPN, that's going to use the ENC charts, but it will not use the NCCs, because NCCs are basically PDFs. Am I correct there?
Yes.
Yeah. So it would depend on if you wanted to create a chart as a PDF or if you wanted to upload the data into an electronic format.
ENC is Electronic Navigation Database, okay? And you can go online and view it online and search out information on that online, on their online ENC application, okay? When you create an NCC chart, a custom chart, you're drawing on the information that's inside of the ENC, and you're converting that to a PDF according to your parameters, okay?
Yeah.
So both of them are using the ENC data. Now, somewhere along the line in your commentary on these questions was that the ENC that's not up to date. No, the ENC is up to date in terms of the design configuration. But today, a flashing light fails on a buoy. That will not show up in the ENC or the NCC. That's a temporary change. Or a ship runs down a buoy, it's no longer there. Okay, that can be reported and reported back to you through the Coast Guard LNM and BNMs. But if it's not fixed, it could be 3 months before they replace that buoy, let's just say. The ENC and the NCC will both show the design configuration. The buoy should be here, but it does not show the fact that it was destroyed. But the Coast Guard local notice to mariners and B&M will show that information.
Yeah, we ran into that during the 106 I just came back from. Over near Swan Creek, the red number 4 was out of position, and it was in the local notice to mariners, but it was not in either the ENC or the NCC. It's just they had it in the regular spot, as did the Garmin
Right.
multifunction display.
Right.
Similarly, when we were down in Cape Charles City, the Garmin multifunction display was showing 2 red 6s, one lighted, one not, within a couple of dozen feet of each other, where there was only one there. I think your comment about the updates being suspect is completely valid. The problem with the updates is you don't know what you don't know, because the only way you could know whether or not you got all the updates is to have another list of all the updates and check the updates against the updates.
And this is what you have to understand that is necessary. No matter what chart you're using, you're going to have to be able and knowledgeable in how to get the update information and keep on top of that. So when we're doing cruise planning, one of the key parts of our cruise planning is, okay, here's the chart, here's the routes we want to sail, here are the waypoints and so forth. But now these buoys that we're looking at, are they there? Have they changed? Is there anything critical? So any critical information on navigational aids, you want to go back and verify whether or not they have been reported. And you can do that. There are manual methods where you can go through these documents to do that. And you can also do it through the MSI.
It reminds me of the 106 you and I did years and years ago, where we checked the local notice to mariners before we departed. It had been created on Wednesday. We checked it on Saturday. We verified a bunch of stuff. And then when we got down to the mouth of Chesapeake Bay, we're looking for the red number 2N at the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay, and it wasn't there. And we were like, well, wait a minute. It wasn't in the local notice to mariners. That day, the new local notice to mariners came out, and it was on the new list. So I like the fact that those lists are now much more functional, much more up to date, but you're still going to have a situation where you can leave today and it's okay when you left, and when you get there, it's not there. And you have to be willing to understand that everything is variable, that even if you have 99.99% of all the information, there's always that 0.01 that will come and get you.
Yeah, and the other key point here is that on a beautiful sunny day, 10 knots of breeze, you're doing along fine. This all sounds very silly to you, right? Mm-hmm. But try it at 2 a.m. with fog and 20 knots of wind blowing.
Right. And a bit of stomach distress because you haven't been sleeping real well. Yeah, you get really comfortable with the idea when you're offshore, particularly when you're offshore just far enough that your internet's not working and you can't get that latest update.
Yeah.
I circle back to this. I miss the PDF charts. I do have to say that the PDF charts are still out there. And so you can go to the website, as you said, Tom, and you can get the historicals, which are the last versions of those. I will say there are companies that are making electronic copies of the old PDF areas. For example, the Chester River chart was 12272. Ocean Graphics, which is one of these companies, creates a 12272 OG.
Right.
We have tried to use it. It's not really great because while it covers the same area, it does not actually have the same data. There's big chunks that are just there be dragons here, kind of, like the old charts where it reached a certain point and then it just said beyond this point we have no idea. Some of those OG charts are that way.
One of the things that you can do with PDF charts, well, one that you mentioned is going back to the historical charts and downloading that and printing that. I think it's perfectly valid. Mm-hmm. You can also buy, let's say, a chart kit, a MapTech chart kit, and that will have in it not the latest version necessarily. It may be a year or 2 years old, but again, it gives you a good visual perspective of that chart. Clear printing, very, very readable chart surface, but you have to understand critical information you have to augment, supplement, update, and so forth.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize it, but a lot of that depth information, those soundings and stuff, those are 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years out of date.
Yeah.
On the most, and the electronic copies are 60 years out of date because that was the last time that area was surveyed. So the fact that, I've got a chart that I made yesterday doesn't mean that your data is up to date. It means that you printed that chart yesterday.
Yeah. For the most part, the depth information on a chart, even if it's old, for boats like we're sailing, recreational boats that are not 200 feet long and a gazillion tons, that information is probably pretty good. If we're going to be tacking up, let's say Chesapeake Bay, we're going to use our depth sounder to decide when we're going to tack. So if we tack on the depth sounder, let's say you decide ahead of time, we're going to tack at 12 foot depth. Well, fine. Whether the chart is right or wrong, you still can use your depth sounder to key onto you when you should steer left and steer right. Okay.
Absolutely. I think the other thing about the information on the charts is that there is information there that has never existed or existed for a period of time. I'm thinking of the private marks. For example, the charts for the Chester River to this day and in the light list still say that there's a yellow buoy off of Gray's Inn Creek that I've been sailing that area now for 10, 12 years, and that buoy was never there. It was a private buoy. Somebody put it in there, reported it to the Coast Guard, and then never told the Coast Guard it wasn't there. It was removed, and so the system continues to show that. And I've had students for years try to use that as a mark on their planning. Oh, we're going to go to that yellow and then go south from there. We can do that, but you're going to have a problem. We're talking about the AIS stuff. I'm interested in those synthetic versus real versus virtual buoys. Can you go through that again?
Yeah. Okay. So there are three types: physical, virtual, and synthetic. Physical means that the electronic AIS transmitter is physically attached to the buoy. Synthetic is where they transmit from a shore station an AIS signal that will show up on your radar screen or your AIS screen, however you're reading that. And they transmit that AIS location to where the buoy should be. The buoy may have blown off of that position, but on your screen, you will see it as, here's that buoy location. The third one then, virtual, is where there is no buoy and no intended buoy, and they transmit a AIS signal to that location that will show up on your screen. And they may put that up in case there's an emergency, something occurred and they want to give warning to navigators of that situation. There's no time to put a buoy in there, so they can transmit that. So that's the virtual. So there's physical, synthetic, and virtual.
Well, it seems like a synthetic could be a real problem if the system is saying the buoy is here, but you're physically looking at the buoy over there.
Yeah.
Where the actual buoy, if the buoy moves, the AIS moves.
In the physical, it does.
In the
right.
physical, yeah.
The synthetic shows you where the buoy should be. So if you honor that information and the buoy is not where it should be, you're still being guided correctly.
Okay. I've got two comments. I've got a comment. Do you have any experience using Aquamap? My chart plotter maps are 20 years and seem pretty accurate for the bay. I've used Aquamaps on my iPad, West Coast and Chesapeake Bay, and enjoy the updated info, including depths in maps narrows. I have used Aquamaps. One of the reasons I used Aquamaps is because it uses the additional data source of the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps, where I was talking earlier about survey data being out of date by decades, the Army Corps of Engineers information is generally way more up to date because they're required by law to do continuing surveys of the intercoastal areas. And Kent Narrows, Naps Narrows, they're going ahead and doing those even though they're not technically on the ICW. I do like Aquamaps. The only problem I have with Aquamaps is my problem with an iPad. The idea of putting an iPad in the cockpit becomes problematic. That's a lot of money to just be sitting in your cockpit. But the program itself, I really like it.
But the overall thing is no matter where you're getting your chart from, no matter what chart you're using, you should have the ability to look back at the basic data that NOAA and the Coast Guard are publishing, because they are the authorities on that stuff. Okay, you should you should have the ability to look that information up in advance of your cruise and verify.
That's an interesting setup for this next question. Can you speak to depth sounding that is crowdsourced from other users who use their depth transponder in some apps? I don't recall in which apps I saw this. I know that Raymarine does have that application. I know that Garmin does. My issue with that is crowdsourced data is as good as the crowd. If you're taking data from different data sets, my depth finder might be a foot below the water line. Yours might be right at the water line. The next guy's might be 3 feet below the water line. And all of those are reporting different pieces of data, and it's not necessarily reporting that offset. So I go through there and I say, well, the water depth is 6 feet. You go through and you say, no, it's 5 feet. The next guy goes through and says, no, it's 3 feet. All of that data is skewed. Somebody made the comment about Bob 423. Bob 423, for those of you who don't know it, is a guy who goes up and down the intercoastal waterway every year and provides information about what he sees. He's an engineer. His information is usually rock solid. And he actually creates GPX files that you can import into your multifunction display to put actual waypoints in your multifunction display of the path you should take. Somebody says, I believe Aquamap also supports Active Captain. They do. Garmin can support Active Captain. There's a bunch of apps now. Coastal Explorer, Tom mentioned earlier, will integrate Active Captain information. Again, my thing with Active Captain is it's crowdsourced data, so you get 5 people, 4 say, this is the most amazing anchorage I've ever been into. The 5th guy says, we tried to anchor here and we drug all through the night. It's worth exactly what you're paying for it. Next comment, how about Argo Nav? I have never heard of Argo Nav. Is it anything? We can't speak to that. Question, what all does Active Captain do? Active Captain is a crowdsourced database. Generally speaking, they put things into one of four categories. They have a category for marinas. They have a category for anchorages. They have a category for, I'm going to say, other services. And then they have a problems category. And the problems category is the one that most people use most frequently. It's the one that says, you come across an Active Captain icon on your screen and you click on it and it says, we sailed through here at 12 o'clock on Friday the 22nd and we ran aground, so avoid this spot. And you have to determine in your mind, is that a valid comment from somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, or is that somebody who ran aground and doesn't really know where they were, isn't really sure about what time it was. They just know that they're going to post something about it. Marina reviews and anchorage reviews, they're just like any other Yelp review. They're going to be highly dependent upon how the person feels, what the person's looking for. Some of them are really, really good. They're very good about saying this is exactly what we saw and these are the people we talked to. Some of them are, this place sucks, never go here.
I am old school, and I believe, and I have done for all my sailing career, I have used the NOAA data, the Coast Guard data, and I have a lot of confidence in them in terms of, because they are, and the Corps of Engineers, as you say, Frank, because they are the original source of this information. So when you buy any chart from someone else or an application or what have you, Garmin did not go out and do the surveys. They have taken basically the NOAA, the Coast Guard data information. Now they've added bells and whistles to it to make it look pretty and marketable and really neat to you, the user. But go to the basic underlying data that all comes from the government agencies that are doing the survey and keeping the databases. So I say, well, if that's the case, I'm going to go back and primarily rely on the government databases as my primary information. And then I know that if I'm using an out-of-date PDF chart, I know how to update that chart to my standards, to be able to use that information and verify critical information.
I agree 100%. This is the U.S. chart number one, and unfortunately it's being flipped here, so you can't really see that. The reason I think this is important to have on board is that a lot of the information in the new ENC charts uses different symbology than the old raster charts, the old PDF charts. And this book has basically a cross-reference between the old symbols and the new ECDIS symbols, ECDIS, Electronic Charting Data Information Systems. And a lot of times on your multifunction displays or Coastal Navigator, the ENC charts that we were talking about, they're going to use those new symbols, and it helps to be able to cross-reference the new symbol with an old symbol. And you can go and you can look at it and pick it, as you were talking about, where you can click on it and get all the information about it. But knowing what the symbol means, is it this kind of thing or is it that kind of thing? I think that's an important part of being able to just look at the chart plotter and go, okay, this is the information big picture.
On that score, the ENC uses the other symbols, what I call international symbols, basically, because a lot of those symbols are used throughout the world, but not necessarily in the U.S. The NCC, where you can create your own PDF chart, that uses the Coast Guard symbols, U.S. Coast Guard symbols. So if you create an NCC chart off of the ENC database, as we discussed, you will get the U.S. Coast Guard symbols just like the old PDF charts have. So there's similarity right there.
Yeah. But if you're trying to compare that to what you're seeing on your Garmin chart plotter, there's going to be some symbology differences.
Right.
So I heartily recommend having a copy of the chart number one. The best way to get that is, of course, to do our 105 class, because you're going to get a copy of that book as part of the 105 class. I think that brings us to the end of another chat. Thank you much for your time, Tom. Everybody's saying good things.
And good to see you, Frank. And thank you all for joining us.
All right, folks. Good night.
Take care.